hopefully you can hear me well, because I can't hear anything. And I just ask for a couple of seconds until I share my screen again. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. So as Simon introduced me, I'm going to be talking about taking over from where Chris left off and talking about customer profiling. And to be perfectly honest, this is a bit weird for me, giving this virtual talk. I guess I am the first one, so it must be weird for you guys as well. Simon, I think next year I'm going to be buying a plane ticket because it will be much easier. Anyways, I'd really appreciate it if at least the online people could turn on their cameras so I can see some reactions at least. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just gonna jump into it. My name is Peter Illich. Actually, I'm a mentor here with Founders and Mentors, and most probably I'm guessing I am here because they needed someone young to speak as well. And well, all joking aside, I am the founder and head of strategy at Further Digital Solutions, which is a product development company. We basically work with clients who have an idea for a digital product, and we help them take that concept all the way, the product all the way from being a concept to being market ready. And while we work on such projects, we often see that early stage startups struggle understanding who their customers are. And you might ask, why should you care? Why should you do customer profiling in the first place? Well, very simply put, if you don't know exactly who your customers are, you will lack focus. You will lack focus in your marketing, in your sales efforts, and in your actual product development. So if I would only have a pound for every time I heard the phrase, everybody can be your customer who is interested, well, I probably wouldn't be here giving this talk. So the problem with that is that if you try to target a very broad public, it will make your communication be all over the place. And that means you're going to lose customers simply because they won't feel that you're speaking to them. So don't do that. Always specify who your target customers are. And the way you do that is using a tool called a user persona. You might have heard of user personas from marketing or user experience design if you ever had an encounter with those domains. Basically, a persona is one slide or one page that, at the very least, should contain a name, a representative photo, a short bio, a job title, your users' assumed problems and pain points, your users' assumed goals or needs, and most often you'll also need to include the context. And by context, I mean the actual environment where they will use the product or the environment where they will be facing the problem that you're trying to solve. Now, there's also an important note I have to make here. Personas are not real users. They are merely an archetype of a group of users. So Asaf here in our example he's not a real person. He just represents the shared characteristics of a group of people. So that's very important to understand about personas. So great. Now we know what personas are. Let's see how we can go on about creating one. So the process usually starts by you doing some kind of a research. So this may be a survey that you do with a group of people about your idea, or even better, you do some one-on-one interviews with people. And after you complete that research, what you should do is make a list of all the different user behaviors and user pain points that you find out during those interviews. And finally, what you will do is identify patterns and trends in the list. Your personas will be based on these grouping trends. You should also avoid using average data, averages of your collected data. You don't want your persona to be 2.5 years old or having 7.5 years of experience in a different domain. You want them to represent a possible real person, not a non-existent average customer. And if you do it right, if you do your personas right, they will give you focus. So you know who you want to reach, and you'll be able to focus all your efforts into reaching them. It will also help align your team, so everyone on your team knows who you want to cater to. And one more thing, it will also help you gain the perspective, the point of view of your users. It will help you associate more easily with them. And what I want to do today is I want to show you some of the common mistakes that we often encounter when people do personas, and show you why you should avoid making these mistakes. And number one is not giving your personas a name or a photo. As I said, they're just representations of an audience. So why should you? Well, giving the persona a name and a photo might feel dorky, but in the end, it helps build empathy with your users. And when finished with the persona, what you should do with them is actually stick them on a wall, like on a white wall, like I have here behind me. And that way you'll be constantly reminded who you are working for. When developing a product or service, that's your most important job, not losing sight of who your customers are. Mistake number two is the most common one we encounter, and that is focusing on demographics only. But let's see what demographics are in the first place. So demographics are quantifiable statistics of people. So these are traits like age, gender, marital status, income, or education level. And you've probably seen this. So demographics is something like this. You might have seen this example on the internet lately, but in case you didn't, I'll give you a couple of seconds to let it sink in. Okay, so as you can see, both of these gentlemen share the exact same demographic characteristics, but in fact, they are two very different customers. Let's say you're selling studded leather jackets. Ozzy might be a great customer, but try selling those to Prince Charles. I bet that would be a fun exercise to do. So yeah, don't just use demographics. Instead, do your customer segmentation based on user needs, user behaviors, and psychographics. Let's go through each of those very quickly. So behavior segmentation is whether or not someone takes a particular action and how frequently they do it. So for leather jackets, you might ask, do they go to rock concerts every month? When speaking of need-based segmentation, you speak about the users, a shared high-level need of users, but they always have very different detailed needs. So some might wear leather jackets because they need protection from the wind. Some just want to look cool, and others just need to show they belong to a gang, like in Sons of Anarchy. And finally, psychographics. This might require a bit more explanation. So psychographics is a characteristic that classifies people according to variables such as attitudes, opinions, or values. So if you're selling zero waste or sustainable products, for example, which is very hip nowadays, you want to target someone who is eco-conscious. And this is neither a demographic, nor a need, nor a behavior-based characteristic. This is what we call psychographics. Okay, moving on. Mistake number 3 is believing that if you only sell to businesses, you don't need a persona. Let's think of a scenario here. Let's say you're selling medical insurance that companies offer as incentives for their employees. This is a typical business-to-business deal. But if you think about it, behind every enterprise, behind every business, there are people who make the decisions to buy. And there's also people who will be championing your product. So these are the people who should be your personas. In the above case, which I just mentioned, your user persona will probably be the head of the HR department or some other mid-level decision maker who needs to find a solution that is financially viable for the company, but also counts as stimulus for the employees. So that's how you should go on about creating your persona. Yes, mistake number 4. Remember how I said you should stick the personas on your office wall? Well, don't leave them on forever. Personas are not meant to be end products. As you do more research, more interviews, and most critically, as people start using your product, you will gain more and more information about your users. So what you should do is take these learnings, iterate, as Chris said, and integrate them into your personas. Finally, the last mistake we often see is that people don't differentiate between user personas and buyer personas. So let's just clear that up a bit. For instance, who is the customer for a children's book? We can think of the child as the book's user persona, as they are the ones consuming it, but it's not going to be them who decides whether or not to purchase the book. It's the parent. So the parents will be your buyer persona. In product development, it's very important to cater to both. Your communication will be aimed at the buyer persona, but the user experience of your product will be targeted towards the user persona. So if the people who are your users don't like it, if they will give bad feedback, buyers won't buy the product again. In our case, if the child doesn't like the books you're publishing, parents aren't going to buy them for their children anymore. So I think this image illustrates this very well. If the user experience is bad, buyers might realize that and not buy it anymore. Okay, so how can you use a persona? The great thing about personas is that you can use them throughout your product development process and beyond. So you can use them when you're trying to find candidates for customer interviews. Of course, customer interviews are the best way to get validation on an idea, but I'm sure Simon will touch upon this subject more in his talk. You can also use them when you're creating a business plan. So those of you who saw Chris's presentation, you remember he talked about the customer segment column on the business model canvas. So that column over there is basically a distilled version of your personas. You can also use them when you're creating a marketing plan or setting up pay-per-click advertisement campaigns. You can use them when you're briefing your agency who will be working on your branding and your communication. And you will also be using them when you're going to create user interface designs for your product, your website, or your app. Honestly, there's probably a lot more that I haven't thought about right now, but it just shows you how versatile a tool they are. And it all boils down to the fact that they give you a quick shared understanding of your customers and to every other party involved. Okay, that's all I wanted to tell you about today. I think I still have a minute, but I'd rather have more time for questions. So hopefully you will have many, and yeah, over to you guys.
Thank you very much. Peter, can you hear me okay? From inside the room?
I can hear you not very okay, but I'll do my best.
Okay. Why don't you run the question and answer session then? If I let you run the Q&A and just you ask people to ask questions, or I'll get people to ask questions.
Okay, great.
Has anybody got any questions here in the room for Peter? No, the room's silent. Let's see online. I prefer some online questions, to be honest, Peter. If you could see if people can ask you questions.
In the meantime, if nobody has questions or until they come up with the questions, I've put up a QR code, which you should be able to see, which will take you to our website where we have tons of free resources on product development, blog articles, and whatnot. And if everybody is done with scanning that QR code, I'll put up the other slide, which will give you all the links to our and the contact details where you can reach us or me.
You can unmute your mic and ask Peter a question.
Awesome.
Crystal? Just need to unmute your mic to ask Peter a question.
No, you have to do this.
Okay, so
just move outside. It's still
I can't really see what's happening, but in the meantime, Tim had a question over in chat, and he's asking how many people should be included in a typical survey of prospective customers. So yeah, that's a tough one. Because it also depends on your product. So if you have a very niche product, it's going to be very hard for you to get many users. But usually, if you want to be really representative, if you want to get the best results, you should at least have a couple of hundred of answers, or even 1,000 for it to work. Sometimes you won't be able to get that. Sometimes you will be happy if you get 100 answers. Just try to find patterns as best you can. But there's lots of ways you can get more answers. Just post your survey in Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, Reddit subreddits, wherever you think you can reach your audience, and that will generate you a lot of survey answers.
Peter, there's some more questions in the chat as well, if you want to take a look at the chat.
There's another question which says, how do you update personas for different countries if you cannot conduct customer interviews? I don't really see a reason why you can't conduct customer interviews in 2022. Just as I said, then you can do surveys instead and base your personas on the surveys. And again, subreddits, different groups, wherever, forums where you can reach your audience in those countries. I hope that answers your question.
So, Crystal, you're unmuted now. You want to speak? You can speak if you have a question. Okay. Okay, Peter, thank you very much for your talk, because I'm following on from this. I'm going to be focusing on what you've actually, on the whole customer profile part of this, that all comes from the business model canvas. You've given a link for us to scan. You've given us your website. Have you got anything else you'd like to say before we stop this part of the call?
No, I put up, in the meantime, I put up our contact details. Feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm usually pretty active over there. And Simon and everyone else, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.